Realtors exclusive right of sale listing agreement by the Florida Realtors. This is the listing agreement we should be using to make sure you should get paid. Make sure you use the right one. There are some others available. At the top, we put the seller's name or names. Of course, make sure that you have got the seller's owners of record to put on here. The broker, your brokerage name will go here. It's the brokerage name. You can put your name after it, but the listing is owned by the brokerage. This is granting authority to sell the property. The broker has exclusive right to sell the property between the dates, beginning date and ending date. Traditionally, that's 6 months, but any period of time can be negotiated. Upon full execution of a contract for sale and purchase of the property, all rights and obligations of this agreement will automatically be extended through the date of actual closing. So there's no need to worry. This is March 4th. Let's say you go under contract March 1st and it's a 45-day closing. Don't worry about the listing agreement expiring. You're good to go because of that line. And then we get into the property will be offered to any person without regard to race, color, religion, no discrimination, of course. Property description, street address, of course, city, state, and then the legal description from the tax records. Personal property to be included and stay with the property during the sale. You're going to list these things, and this carries over, of course, then to your listing. Occupancy, you're going to want to know, is it or is it not currently occupied by a tenant? And if it is, you need the expiration date of the lease. Here you're going to put the initial listing price of the property. You do have to have a price in here, and this is what authorizes you to put that price in your MLS listing. And if there's any change to that, it just cannot be verbal after a phone call or even an email. You need to do a modification to listing agreement to do a price change, price reduction. Financing terms, cash, conventional, VA, FHA. Seller financing, extremely rare. I would say don't worry about that. Same with seller expenses. You normally don't get the seller to agree to pay any kind of additional mortgage costs, so that's usually blank. Broker obligations. Broker agrees to make diligent and continued efforts to sell the property in accordance with this agreement until a sales contract is pending on the property. This explains the multi-listing service, the MLS, the importance of it, and the rules that we have to enter this within 1 business day of marketing the property in any way, including putting a sign up in the yard. At the bottom, you're going to have your seller's initial or initials and the sales associate. Normally, the broker doesn't initial this, it's just the sales associate. So that's page 1. The broker authority, seller authorizes the broker to market the property unless we're marked down here, but this is an opt-out. So you really don't ever want to have this as an opt-out. The MLS is very important to us. So there's going to normally be no initials of a seller here. Check if applicable. If you're going to use a lockbox system to show the property, you want to put a check mark in there. And the seller agrees that the lockbox is for the seller's benefit and releases the broker of liability. They should, of course, keep all valuables put away during the showing process. Also, you should mark the box that says withhold verbal offers here on line 72. Because as you know from your licensing class, verbal offers are useless. And of course, we're withholding all offers after the seller accepts a sales contract. That means presenting it to them. We don't need to present. We can keep them in our inbox in case something bad happens with the current contract. Virtual office websites. There's a lot going on out there in the internet world. You can mark this box. Seller does not authorize automated estimate, but it's kind of hard to have that not occur. It's kind of hard to enforce. But there is a box you can mark when you're entering your listing into the MLS to not authorize third parties to write comments. That's the one we normally can enforce. Seller obligations. In consideration of the broker's obligation, seller agrees to cooperate and you'll see the items listed there, pretty self-explanatory. Hold the broker harmless. Let us know if they do anything crazy like another mortgage or deciding to lease it. And of course, they're to perform any reasonable acts necessary to comply with FIRPTA, the foreign seller. Foreign sellers. If you get involved with one of those, contact your broker. You're supposed to make disclosures of any material facts that affect the value of the property, and that is a separate form, the seller's uh, property disclosure form. We'll talk about that in another video. And we're telling them to consult appropriate professionals in related to tax and inspectors for property condition. That's not our job. Once again, seller initial or initials and your initials as the sales associate. Compensation. Now don't get confused here. Item 8, seller will compensate broker. All the money initially goes to the listing brokerage. This is for example purposes only, 6% of the total purchase price plus, and then the word or. You can go with a flat dollar amount, which is sometimes used with a small dollar condo or mobile home on owned land, but normally we work off of percentages. You can add a dollar amount, but again, that is kind of rare. You will usually go NA on for an option. You learned what an option is in your licensing class. Extremely rare where somebody's going to accept $5,000 to hold the property for me for 6 months. And you can NA any leasing. Here's our protection period. If within 60 days after termination date, the seller transfers or contracts to transfer the property or any interest of the property to any prospects with whom were obtained during the listing period, they're still going to owe us for the commission. So you want to go ahead and put something like 60 days in there. Retain deposits. Now this is if something happens that you go under contract and the seller gets to keep the earnest money deposit. They've changed this over the years. If you leave that blank, it says that we can keep 50% of that earnest money deposit. I recommend you put a 0 in there because that's kind of adding insult to injury. If there's a canceled contract, you want to control the seller's grief that happened and get it relisted and get it under contract again instead of going after half of their earnest money deposit that they've collected. So I always recommend you put 0 in there. Now here's what the buyer's agent gets. The buyer's agent, out of that 6%, as an example, it could be 5, whatever you can negotiate. This is the percentage of the purchase price that goes to a single agent for the buyer. Now in Florida, it's normally going to be a transaction broker for the buyer, but we still mark the box at 3%, 3% in the box for transaction broker. This one like never happens. No brokerage relationship to the buyer. As soon as they write the offer, they've got a transactional relationship. So you can throw a 1% in there, and if you ever see that occur, give me a call. Now the other box here is, again, we can be using whole dollars. If that is the case, that would be put here. But again, we normally work off percentages. Broker will work as transaction broker in item 10, line 137. That's key. That's key. We enter into this as the listing agent, listing brokerage as transaction. That way, another agent from your brokerage can be the buyer's agent. Okay, because dual brokerage is illegal. You can't be a single agent as a brokerage to both the buyer and the seller. And again, you remember the brokerage owns the listing. So that's important. Transaction broker, transaction agent. Conditional termination. You can put down a cancellation fee and then try to collect it if something happens that they want to cancel. Dispute resolution. Under Florida law, we normally try to go to arbitration. But I'll tell you what, if things go that bad, we normally let them go instead of all the negative press, if you will, for the agent and the brokerage. We don't require any initials here because they can lawyer up if they want to, and they're not required to go to arbitration. So normally we kind of leave that blank. Miscellaneous. This agreement is binding on the sellers and brokers' heirs. which simply means, like I said, the brokerage owns the listing. If something happens that you walk out of the listing agreement and you get hit by a truck, well, the broker is going to assign this to another agent in the brokerage. If the seller would happen to pass, well, their heirs already have it listed with us for the estate. Initials again. Okay, and then at the top of the next page, line 162, it says this agreement is the entire agreement. Again, everything has to be in writing, as you remember. Additional terms is normally blank, but here's where you would put something to the effect if you were going to offer a discount if you brought the buyer and there was no buyer's agent commission to be paid. In this example, where we're getting 6%, you would use the wording, in the event that John Doe real estate agent brings the buyer and there is no buyer's brokerage involved, total commission charged to the seller will be reduced to, and then whatever you negotiate. Seller's signature and contact information, address, email address, authorized sales associate or broker. Okay, authorized sales associate is fine. You're going to put your signature here and date, the brokerage name, and use your telephone number. That's fine. We want them contacting you. And this is important. Item 191 is a requirement. Now, if you get electronic signatures by chance, this doesn't have to be filled in. But if this is in ink, we need to know how and when your seller got the fully executed copy of this, and then another set of initials at the bottom. And then your 4-page exclusive right of sale listing agreement is complete.